No, so welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Kickabout. I'm back hosting David O'Hara, and with me today I have Liverpool fan David Kennedy. Welcome back, Dave.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks for having me.
And we have Kirk Loco, a United fan. So welcome, Dave. Welcome, Kirk.
Cheers. Thanks for the invite.
In good company with the two Liverpool fans.
Oh God, they're going to gang up on me.
Yeah. So this episode now is just a review of the weekend's games. Obviously, as we're recording now, the Crystal Palace and Brighton match is still due to happen, but barring an absolute classic, I wouldn't say it would necessarily be one we'll be needing to review with the big games that happened over the weekend. Fantasy football wise, I was chatting to one of the lads in work actually. Fantasy football wise, I think a classic 0-0 draw could be an ideal result there for a lot of people. But yeah, so we'll get into reviewing the games. So the main ones that were the standout ones over the weekend were obviously the Chelsea and City game. United played at home to Aston Villa, losing 1-0. Liverpool played what turned out to be an unbelievable game with Brentford, drawing 3-3. And obviously Arsenal, the absolute enigma that is Arsenal, decided to turn up and comfortably beat Tottenham 3-1. That one's a bizarre one. I'm looking forward to chatting about that one. But yeah, I suppose if we go... We'll go with, I suppose, the teams we support initially. Kirk, I might come to you first to reflect on United's loss 1-0 at home to Aston Villa. What did you think of it? How do you think United performed, or how did that end up being the result?
I think it's a given. It was absolutely atrocious. It really was. Now, I've very much been, in the Ollie in camp. You've probably seen from the text messages and stuff like that. And I run my own United forum as well on Facebook. And maybe I'm caught up a little bit in the, the rider over sentimentality type thing of, wanting to see Ollie do well. And it's kind of clouding my judgment sometimes. But, we've got 3 losses in our last 4 games, and you can certainly feel, going into his 3rd season, it isn't acceptable. You can't go out and, go out and sign the likes of Varane, Ronaldo, Sancho. Like, I was chatting to a lot of fellow United supporters, and I don't think any of us were expecting a transfer window quite like that, on the back of COVID. I think we were expecting, the purse strings maybe to be kept closed quite tightly. We thought maybe Sancho would get done. Outside of that, I don't think we were expecting any other kind of big names. I like how we handle our business during the summer, especially the Varane deal. I know it dragged on a little bit with the whole COVID, like the quarantine type thing, but the actual deal itself and getting it done across the line, that was absolutely remarkable. I thought we'd done great business with that. And then Ronaldo, of course, then you saw the texts in the group. It was like from, heartbreak to euphoria then within a 24-hour period. But, losing 3 of the last 4 games, it kind of does put, some very strong seeds of doubt. Is Ollie going to be able to turn it around? I always try my best to, cling on to some kind of optimism. I'll give an example. I'll show then later on with the Spurs and Arsenal game. I'll mention it later, but things can change around very, very quickly in football. Okay, we've lost 3 games out of the last 4. We've got a really, really tough run of games coming up now in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I hate to say it could be make or break for Ollie in that time frame. And it's just kind of typical of United. I said it kind of tongue in cheek. One of the guys posted it on the Man United forum on Facebook. Where do you see our next win coming from? Or how do we face through these, next 2 months? I said it'd be just absolutely typical of United then to go on an unbeaten one through the next 2 months. And at the back end of that, he only got far on the screenshot as Man City. The week after that, we played Watford. We could end up going unbeaten, through those games, and then playing Watford and end up losing 2-1, 3-1 to Watford. That's the Jekyll and Hyde nature that I've kind of become, accepting of almost of United in the post-Fergie era. We can't seem to get over these false dawns all the time. The game itself at the weekend, Villa fully deserved it. Absolutely brilliant. You could see it. I think it was within the first 10 minutes. They attacked us down the right flank. Cash swung the ball into the far side. The other fullback, Taggart, he was very, very unlucky. I think it might have possibly got a deflection. Wan-Bissaka, that kind of set the tone, for the rest of the game. I haven't really been very impressed with the English lads that have come back so far. Shaw and Maguire, they both picked up injuries then and went off. If you could kind of give maybe Ollie a little bit of leeway, at all for the weekend, you could say maybe the 2 defensive injuries kind of maybe put a spanner in the works. You don't really plan on having to take off, 2 of your defenders, for tactically. You kind of hope to have, your subs for your midfield to kind of get control of it, or to grab a goal late on, whatever the case may be. But losing the 2 guys, I think maybe possibly put a bit of a spanner in the works, maybe in any kind of tactical plans that he might have had. It was absolutely good. But I've done my best to try and block it out, as you could well imagine. For the weekend, it was absolutely just heartbreaking. I think it makes it worse, as I say, on the back of like the young boys' results, and the West Ham and gone out of the cup as well. I'm not too fussy at the moment with the League Cup. It really depends, on how the season plays out. If we were to pick up an FA Cup, you could kind of forgive going out early in the League Cup. But in the here and the now, you do be a little bit disheartened. It's a bit like, you could have used that maybe, for a stepping stone. A lot of, former managers, Gary Neville, I think, made the point today that Jose and Pep Guardiola both did that. You win your League Cup, you go on to something that kind of sets the mentality within the club. So it's a little bit disheartening to see that maybe.
I think at this point of the season as well, the League Cup is maybe not something you want to be in come semi-final time. I think the 2-legged semi-finals are back this year, haven't been gone again. So again, if you're looking at minutes and things, it's not necessarily something you want to be involved in unless you're winning the thing then. But at this point in the season, when obviously you have players, you might have started the season with using the same 12 or 13 players in most of your league games. Like, there's a lot of players who need minutes. And again, I think it is useful to be in the first couple of rounds of the League Cup, just for squad rotation purposes, just to try and make sure, like you get an injury to Shaw now, for example. And again, if you'd been able to ease someone like Chels back into fitness and stuff after his period out and things, again, the League Cup is ideal for that, rather than just having to rely on kind of throwing him straight into the deep end or playing something like Dallo out of position, So it's a blow in that sense, even if it isn't going to be, everyone's on the wish list of United fans at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think another thing with it as well, like as they're saying, like these fringe players, the likes of Martial, I think most everybody wants him out the door at this point. There's a lot of rumour going around that the likes of Barcelona might be, sniffing around to maybe do a deal in January. And these League Cup games, as you make the point there, Dave, it's like they're great for them to kind of put themselves in the shop window that, either play themselves back into contention at United or put themselves into the shop window, whichever the case may be. If there's talk, that, you're as good as gone out the door with the next transfer window, then you may as well kind of try and, sell yourself, I suppose, with these games, with these, rare minutes that you get. So it's very handy having those minutes. But I mentioned it a few times in the chat group, but I know he was really trying, like Greenwood. He worked his socks off. I just found it very frustrating with him on Saturday. He was trying to make things happen. I think he was the most creative and the most attack-minded player that we had on the day. I think just his decision-making, had he made one or two smarter decisions, we possibly could have won that. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but we had a great chance at the end of the first half. If he just squared it, 4 or 5 yards to Bruno, he pretty much had an open goal. You would like to think, not based on his penalty missed later on in the game, but he should have probably buried that chance.
That's a great opportunity,
Yeah, and then there was another one then I actually forgot about, and I watched the highlights back again earlier on in preparation for the podcast, and Watkins was played through. It was a crazy kind of like 60-second kind of turnaround, went from one end of the pitch to the other. Ollie Watkins was played through, and it led into a De Gea save. It went out to Wan-Bissaka. He played it to Bruno, had a quick look over his shoulder. Of course, Greenwood was off already. He was at the races, and he instantly saw it, played Greenwood through. And Ronaldo instantly then, of course, ran across him to make that run in to go the opposite direction. and Greenwood was kind of in two minds. He kind of half-heartedly went into the space that Ronaldo made for him, but then he turned back the opposite way toward Ronaldo, went back onto the other side again, and then scuffed that, and his shot went out for a goal kick.
I think he was almost waiting for. He made the wrong decision, then was kind of waiting for Ronaldo to do something else so that he could make something, and then it was a bit of a mess, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I have it wrote down my notes here. Like he had two options. Either at that point, you either play Ronaldo through. That's option A. Option B, you go running into that space that Ronaldo's after making for you, and you get your shot off, But he went for C, and he dithered on it, twisted, turned, went back the opposite way. And before you know it, the chance is gone. It just really kind of frustrated me. There was quite a few instances like that. There was a good point made about the goal. I know we brought it up as well about the Ollie saying, was it offside? I was watching Match of the Day as well. I probably agree with Sherb. I don't think it was offside, to be honest with you. The other thing that I would pick up on, though, that I didn't actually realise on the day, we didn't have anybody on the goalposts. The fullbacks possibly should have been there, Wan-Bissaka or Dalot probably should have been at the post there to possibly, be in the way there to try and defend it. Because, when Haas got his goal, it went straight in at the corner post. And had we had somebody there, possibly we might have stopped that goal going in, possibly. But I made the point as well, it was in the minutes leading up to that goal, Edie Cavani came on, and he really didn't seem to be at the races. You can say, okay, that's fair enough. He was only, on the pitch maybe minute, 2 minutes. Really wasn't paying attention at all. And Wan-Bissaka was absolutely screaming at him, to mark Haas, and he didn't, leading up to the corner kick. And then he turned around again, he was screaming at him again, and it was a few seconds, 10, 15 seconds before he went, the light bulb went off, I better actually go mark my man. And you saw, leading up to it, the camera was really zoomed in on the rough and tumble that they were having. And I just felt something bad was coming. And then, of course, he loses his man. And, you're 1-0 down before you know it.
It's funny you say with the men on the post, because if that gets given as offside against Watkins on the keeper, then it's a good decision to have no one on the post, because you've dropped your man offside. Do you know what I mean? Because from the second ball, but when that doesn't get given, then you lose that advantage, and then you obviously are at the disadvantage of having no one on the front post to clear the ball. It just goes to show there's no right or wrong way to defend a corner, I think. And again, there's pros and cons to every system and things. I just think in that instance, like it didn't work out for United, and I think Villa worked it quite well. It was interesting. I think it was on the Match of the Day interview the House was saying that there's a lot being made of Villa having got this new set piece coach, this Northern Irish guy, and he worked with Midtjylland, and who obviously are the same school of thought as Brentford, who will come on to later, who did a lot of good set piece work against Liverpool. But a lot been made of like this fella they brought in, and that he's very progressive and stuff. But what I thought was quite funny was that in the interview House, himself and Mings had just decided to change positions on that one corner. Like they kind of went off script a little bit and did the opposite. And it's funny that was what kind of yielded the results in getting the goal. But it was a great header, to be fair to him. He did very well to generate that power, like from the position he was at. It was a good finish. I don't think De Gea could have done much. On the offside, like for me, I think there's a still that shows like when the defender makes contact with the ball with his head, De Gea is touching Watkins. I think that's interfering with play personally. And it's funny, there's been a few already this season. Like there was the two at Leicester, or the two in the Leicester Brighton game last week. There was the one with Rafinha and Mane on the line in the Liverpool game, which was odd in the sense that it wasn't the goalkeeper being interfered with, but it was the defender on the line. Not something I've really been aware of or on my radar before as a VAR controversy, but something we've had 3 in 3 weeks. But yeah, for me that's offside, but I can also see why it wasn't given.
It's funny you mentioned about the corner coach coming in as well. That's a good point as well. But the point was actually made going into the season as well that United actually hired a coach as well to work on the set pieces as well. And, conceding that goal then just kind of makes it all the more frustrating. I remember going into the season and Thomas Byrne, who's actually in the group as well and in the Fantasy League, I can't remember, it was the Everton game in pre-season, we won 3-0 and I think we got 2 goals from corners, and Harry Maguire I think scored the bullet of a header. And we were all getting excited and giddy and saying, oh, geez, this looks great going into the season. And then a few games later, then, we just look so disorganized with that corner. Okay, you make the point that himself and Mings switch roles, and, Wan-Bissaka screaming at Edie, who isn't switched on at all. They're not picking up their their players to mark them at all. There's nobody on at the goalposts. You know, it kind of makes you feel like, geez, is it the players or is this one on the coaches? Like, I'm kind of wondering myself after that, you know, who's more at fault? Is it the players who just completely switched off? Were they bottling it? I suppose maybe that might be the wrong word, you know, under a bit of pressure. You know, I felt Villa were brilliant, you know, with the high press throughout the whole game. They absolutely, you know, they battered us really, to be honest with you. Like they were fantastic.
Yeah, no, as you said, like they did totally deserve the win. They almost gave it away right at the end, with the penalty, obviously that Fernandes ended up taking. Just to briefly talk about it, like looking at it, like, and obviously before the game there was, or just say in the early stages of the season, there has been the thing of like, oh, is Fernandes still on the penalties, or will Ronaldo just by divine right be the penalty taker? And so obviously we saw at the weekend that Fernandes was the one who was the taker. But he didn't really, he looked entirely out of character going to take it, in terms of, as far as I've ever seen, he always does that really annoying run up and the little hop and stuff. You know, obviously the hop always does my head in, but it works for him. And it, you know, I think he had 21 of his previous 22 penalties, I think I saw the stat was, where he just seemed entirely out of character. He just ran up, didn't go near doing any type of a hop, and just drove it over the bar.
He seemed very frustrated throughout the whole game, pretty much. You know, like, there was a few instances, you know, where I can recall him kind of like stamping feet type thing. And I don't know if I mentioned it, I was picking up on it as well. I think with the injury to Shaw as well, and he's quite reliant on the overlap. Shaw's very good at that, in fairness. You know, the last 6-12 months, he's made a big part of his game. I thought he really, really improved last season, and he's kind of continued on a little bit again then this season. He hasn't quite, you know, started the season as well as I'd hoped he had. But I noticed then when Dalot came on, there was a few instances when Dalot was he was a bit too infield, and he's sitting too far deep. He wasn't getting forward. He wasn't doing the overlap. And it was after the goal in particular, then there was 2 or 3 instances where Bruno was kind of pointing behind his back, as in, you know, do the overlap, like, you know, go on, go over. And Dalot was just staring at him like, what do you want? Like, and he went, like, I could see him actually, his body language and all, like, he kind of stamped his feet, and you know, his arms were getting, you know, he was throwing them around, and he was very, very frustrated. I don't know if it was decided before the game, you know, Bruno's on penalties. I think I read that Ollie was going to say, look, it's up to them. I'm going to let the two of them share it. Let them decide between themselves. Now, where it goes from here, everybody seems to think that, you know, it's a given that Ronaldo's going to take over from here. Maybe he might get the next one. I don't think that means he's necessarily going to be on for the whole season. A year or two back, I don't know if you remember, there was uproar about Pogba, Rashford, and Martial kind of sharing them and saying that there's no leadership there. You have to have one dedicated set piece taker or penalty taker. Maybe we're walking into another problem with that again between the two of them. I don't know. But I have a feeling they're still probably going to share them. You know, I think they will.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But that sort of situation, like you said, that would always make me wary, kind of, like, especially as a fan of that team. They'd be like, oh, I would always be of the opinion that you're walking onto the pitch, you know who's your corner takers, you know who your free kick taker, you know who the penalty taker is. And so when you get a penalty, there's none of this, oh, can I take it? I'd love to score a goal, or you know, the more legitimate one, or I feel, you know, confident and I'm in good form. But, like, say, for example, from the Liverpool point of view, Dave, if Milner's on the pitch, Milner takes the penalty. If Salah's on the pitch, Salah's taking the penalty. You know, so obviously Milner isn't playing half as much as he used to. So it's, you know, 99% of the time, Salah's on the pitch, Salah takes the penalty. You know, and, you know, again, Salah missed one recently, but he's still the person that we're going to be like, Grant, he's taking penalties. End of. No, because we even saw it a few weeks ago with Richarlison trying to argue with the teammates, trying to get the ball for a penalty. I just think even if the player ends up being like, okay, Grant, yeah, we'll let you take it, you know, and it's kind of reluctantly, and he sticks it away, and you're like, okay, perfect. Well, he did score. I still just think it sends kind of a message of not fully being together as a team, because it's more, you know, like that Richarlison came across more as kind of a selfish child wanting to just score a goal.
Yeah, I think it's like an unwanted sideshow. I think, like, when you're under scrutiny anyway. So, like, in United's case, having lost 3 of the last 4, like, with all the fanfare of Ronaldo coming in and Ronaldo being this figure who's like almost, he's not bigger than the club, but you know what I mean, in the sense that he's such a major figure in United's history and stuff. And I think it couldn't have gone worse for United and Solskjaer in that sense, in that they stuck with the original penalty taker, the person who like basically scored 99% of penalties last year, and then he happened to go and miss it. Like, can we just talk about the Emilio Martinez? Like Emilio Martinez is a fantastic goalkeeper, and he'll make many good saves this season. But that piece of mind games or whatever it was is better than anything he'll do all season. Like, I just like it's like he's like a like to think of to do that, like he's like a comedian, like on stage, like just to think of the right thing to do in the right moment to just be the absolute best like outcome. Like
a serious shithouse, really was.
Absolutely. And like, following up, like he has previous, like the stuff from the Copa America with Yerry Mina and stuff in the summer and things, and like that was amazing because it was in an empty stadium and you could actually get the transcript of what he was saying. I don't like, I have a lot of respect in a very much begrudging kind of. I hope I'm my team are never on the receiving end. But big respect for that, because Ronaldo's reaction was so funny. Like, he didn't know what to do. He can't because he
just kind of seemed to stand there.
Yeah, he's like looking at him
like he's like
he agreed with him. Like, he's like, but like I said, like it is an unwanted sideshow, I think, and again, it's not ideal. In terms of having designated penalty taker, I completely get what you're saying. Like, I remember, like, didn't Arsenal kind of around the Invincibles year, like, whenever Henry used to have a thing, if he won the penalty, he wouldn't take it. Wasn't that a thing? And like, they used to kind of share the penalties in that sense. I think like Pires used to take some, and Lauren used to take some, and Gilberto used to take penalties and stuff, didn't it? So like, there's definitely ways of doing it. And again, probably like as fantasy football for perspectives, it's probably going to be frustrating, I think, because I think, like you said, Kirk, I think there might be a bit of chopping and changing. I like whether it's up to them to figure it out or not. Like, I think you can't read too much into it, I think, in terms of leadership and that. But from United's perspective, they're going to want to have it sorted sooner rather than later. It's a big call either way. It's interesting to see how it'll go.
I think it all kind of ties in as well. I just kind of caught a little bit of the Gary Neville podcast, and he was just saying that United need to move away from this whole notion of being a moments team and relying on moments of brilliance from a certain individual. We don't look a team at all at the moment, and you can maybe give Ollie a tiny little bit of leeway because he's got a couple of new faces in there. That's fair enough. But season 3, as I made the point, you kind of have to start getting the results. He has been backed. We can't say that the board, there's been so many complaints about the Glazer family and whatnot, and they haven't supported or whatever financially, this, that, and the other. But season 3, he's had all the money, he's got the players in. This is now an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer team. You can't argue with it. If over the next 2 months we don't start seeing a cohesive unit by and large, and the results don't follow as well, you'd really have to kind of start worrying for him. All right.
I think like judging it as his credentials or whatever, like I think a lot of what Solskjaer has done at United has been actually quite good, and he's definitely exceeded what I thought he was capable of in that sense. But I think if you look, my current stance on it, I suppose at the moment, is that I don't know if Solskjaer is the man to kind of create that cohesive, maybe attacking unit and things. I think man management side of things very good. I think in one-off big games he's shown to be very good. Like, you only have to look at the amount of good results United have gotten away at City in the last couple of seasons, and like the tactical tweaks. And again, I remember one year he played kind of Lingard as a false 9 and kind of completely changed up the kind of tactical playbook in terms of for that game. I think on a one-off basis he actually is quite good at that. But in terms of, you look at like the kind of particularly Guardiola and Klopp having dominated the league for the last couple of seasons, you can really kind of see the kind of the patterns of play that they do to score goals. So again, like the classic one is the Man City get to the byline, and like what percentage of Raheem Sterling's goals have been from a yard out, because they just create that chance over and over again. And they have that way, I suppose, of they know there's a blueprint to scoring a goal. I think Liverpool have that as well. And at the moment, I think United's maybe their tactical stuff goes to a certain point of the pitch, and then in the final third, it's a bit more, okay, let's see what happens. Let's get our good players involved. And then adding Ronaldo late in the window into that again kind of tears up the rule book. Again, if you're Jadon Sancho, you might be expecting to do something, preparing for the season in this role, big transfer, main man of Man United, and then suddenly you're back late from the Euros, and then you're in and out of the team, and then you haven't had a fast start, and then the Ronaldo's there, and it's different to what you might have expected at the time. So I just think there's a lot of upset, I suppose, and kind of not necessarily what maybe Solskjaer was planning in July is now true because of the addition of Ronaldo. Look, he's a great player, he's going to score goals, but I just think there's a little bit of working out to do, and there might be some teething problems. I can fully see, like you said, Kirk, going on a good run in these big games. I think Solskjaer's good at that. In terms of the longer term consistency of scoring goals against teams they should be beating, I think that's where maybe he's falling down currently, and whether he can turn that around will be the making or breaking of him, I think.
I park the United match for the moment, and move on. So obviously myself and Dave, we're Liverpool fans, as we said. So let's have a quick chat about the bizarre match that was the 3-3 away to Brentford on Saturday. Like, I'd like to just kind of, it was, as I said, it was a bizarre match. I'd like to kind of briefly touch. There were a lot of positives to take from it. We scored 3 good goals. Obviously, the man there behind me, Mo Salah, got his 100th Premier League goal for Liverpool, the fastest player in Liverpool history to get it in the top flight in the whole of Liverpool's history, which is obviously phenomenal, given the great goal scorers we've had over the years. And Curtis Jones scored an absolute screamer, which I was delighted for, and it would have been a perfect winner of the game. But look, Brentford, when we went 3-2 up, I was like, okay, thank God we've managed to get another goal. Just need to hold out, because at that point I would say it's definitely, I'd say, our toughest game of the season so far. Where on paper, if you're looking from the outside, you'd be like, well, it's Brentford. They've only come up. They haven't been up in 70 odd years. You would expect on paper Brentford to be one of the weaker teams and one of the more straightforward wins, especially coming off the back of multiple 2 and 3-0 wins. But Brentford are a really tough side to play against, really quality. They're really well set up. I would expect them to do quite well this season. I wouldn't expect them to be even talking about relegation. I'd from what we've seen, obviously, again, it's a I suppose small window that we've seen. It's only been 6 games into the season so far, but based on that, I'd expect them to be quite comfortable. What did you make of the game as a whole, Dave? And how did you feel at the end of it?
Good game. Again, I thought Liverpool did well in parts, and they did lots of things right, and they adapted to a very unique challenge well in certain senses, and then in other ways they very much didn't, and that's why they didn't come away with 3 points. So obviously disappointed. Again, like it's one of those games, I think, when the final whistle goes, you're not sure how to feel, because we could easily have lost it the way it went. But I do think that we probably should have won it, given the chance to be created, and given the look. My biggest thing as a Liverpool fan looking at that game is that, again, if you look at our 3 kind of main defensive, like central defensive linchpins, you have Matip, Van Dijk, and Fabinho. All 3 of them lost a 50-50 inside their own 6-yard box, which led to a goal. And you can't win games in the Premier League if you're going to do that. Again, like there's mitigating factors around each one of them. Again, I think like Fabinho, like maybe just a little bit sluggish on the first goal. Can he just poke it behind for a corner rather than trying to pull on and get out for
it seemed he wasn't definitely sure whether there was a player coming or not, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, I played fullback in at a terrible standard of football and things you can't always know what's behind you for sure. But again, in that situation, and he's played fullback and stuff early in his career and things. Again, I think for me, like the right move there, you just poke it behind for a corner, because you don't know what's behind you, so don't try and play it behind you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's easy for me to say watching, obviously. Second goal, again, like the ball, like the Janelt does it. He gets 2 goals at a header inside our 6-yard box after the ball hit the bar. I mean, like, again, I think Virgil van Dijk 12 months ago wins that header. I just think he's just not quite, that sharpness is there yet. I think that's only going to come with games, and we have to be willing as fans to accept that he's not going to be up to full speed for. Again, they often say with these long-term injuries that you're going to be the period you're out is X amount of months, and it's that period again of playing to get back to where you were, if you know what I mean. So well, he did really well in the game, and like the 1-on-1 defending against Tony in the last minute was classic Van Dijk. Again, I think you see there, just maybe I'm being harsh, but I think he wins that header a couple of seasons ago. And then on the third goal, I mean, like, look, they overloaded Trent on the back post a couple of times, but again, I just don't understand what Matip is doing, because the ball kind of, Trent falls over, the ball kind of gets jammed against his body, and Matip tries to swing at it from the side, but if he just puts himself between the goal and the ball, like they can't shoot. Do you know what I mean? Like Visa can't like do the finish he does because he's in the way. Like whether or not, like if it hits him and goes in or whatever it is, but he tries to poke at it from the side. He doesn't get between himself, the ball and the goal. I just think it was just poor decision making in moments that cost us inside our own 6-yard box. And again, they're going to punish you. But like Brentford were fantastic again. Like they're like kind of a nerds version of Burnley, in the sense that like they have all the physicality and the big lads, and they can play direct football, but they do it in such a clever way, and they target like very specific, thing. And you know the way that club is run, it's all based on data and analytics and stuff. Again, it's quite an interesting case study in a sense, because they're well able. I watched a bit of their game against Wolves. Last weekend was the first time I'd seen them since they come up, and they were quite tidy and kind of in broken play, and like they're not a long ball team, but they have quite a varied skill set, and they can hurt you in different ways, and their set pieces are excellent. Like again, the first goal was a very well worked set piece, and I think they'll do well from that this season. But like I still think that Liverpool should be looking at that game as a game they should have won. Hit the post. Salah went through a clean on goal, took an extra touch.
He absolutely should have scored that.
Ball bobbled, put it over the bar. Like didn't have to take the touch. Last minute, like their keeper was probably man of the match, despite the crazy end game that it was. That probably tells its own story. But look, very enjoyable. Again, if I wasn't a Liverpool fan, I think it would have been my biggest game of the season for sure so far. But look, again, most important thing was not to lose, top of the league. If we can learn from that and hopefully build that little bit of maybe mental resilience that we had in the title winning season, and then might have taken a bit of a dent last season, if we can use that setback, I suppose, as a building block as opposed to maybe something to teach us the other way, then I think it'll stand to us. But obviously it's a big if, so we gotta capitalize on it now.
Yeah, exactly. Kirk, even just to get your thoughts on it like that.
Yeah.
Looking at it, it was, again, we should be beating Brentford, but at the end of the day, as Dave said, both Chelsea and United lost on the day. They were both level at the top going into the day with us. So we've put a point more between us. We're top of the league. Still we're the only unbeaten team left in the side, or sorry, in the league. How does it look kind of from an outside point of view?
From a United point of view, it was a blessing in disguise. I was delighted as well. And a few of the guys obviously giving myself and the rest of the United supporters a bit of stick on the group. But what I saw of the game, geez, it was fantastic. Like, and you saw the reactions on the sideline. The two managers.
It's brilliant.
In belief, like what's going on. It's funny you mentioned that they kind of remind you of like a Burnley, but I actually have it in my notes here that when I was watching them, and I kind of just thought back, like they play with such a tempo and the work rate, but then it's also the physicality as well, and they are very direct. So what they kind of remind me of is a kind of a modernized, a very clever, as you said, there's a lot of data science going in there. It reminds me kind of a modernized version of the Crazy Gang, the old Wimbledon days of the 1990s, and that stadium as well. It's so intense, like the noise there. They're like, I suppose every supporter that's there, like they're living their dreams. They're in the Premier League. Every home game they're going to be G'd up for it. The noise is incredible.
I think the allocation in the away end is like 800 or something ridiculous as well. So it's like it's such an advantage because you're basically like 95 or 99% is going to be home fans.
Yeah, well, this is it. Yeah, I thought as well. Like it's funny you mentioned that about Van Dijk there. He doesn't seem to be quite up to scratch as well. And they did play. They have got different ways of playing, and I don't want to do them an injustice here, like or insult them or anything like that. But the long balls over the top. And it's not just against Liverpool, but they played like that in the season opener. I can't remember who they had in it was Arsenal, wasn't it? The best 2-0.
Yeah, they beat them. I watched that game. They were absolutely brilliant in that game.
Yeah, and they done the same. And it's that long ball up to Tony. And like he's not the tallest man. There was a bit of an argument I remember on the night in the group as well. Like, we all thought he was maybe about 6'3", 6'4", and he's only about 5'9", 5'10" or something.
Yeah.
Like, he's not the tallest. But he somehow seems to win every single header that's near him or near enough. Or if he doesn't win it, he makes it as awkwardly or as awkward as possible for the centre half. He's getting something on it. He's really working his man constantly. And like even like in both games that I've watched them 2 or 3 times, the Liverpool and the Arsenal game in particular, he's all over the pitch, Tony. He's absolutely fantastic. And the other guy up front with him as well, and Bamo, I think that's how you pronounce it. Absolute handful.
And clever, like, and again, I think that like you're saying, like there's a smart team. They do things the right way. The other team they kind of remind me of a little bit is the kind of Allardyce era Bolton team, where he was kind of the first manager using stat zone and stuff, and again, obviously we think of Allardyce as kind of more of a dinosaur these days and things, but at the time when he first brought Bolton up, he was actually really innovative, and they were the first ones doing loads of work on set pieces, and they had this kind of mixture of, like, they had like kind of these veteran kind of continental players who had a bit of class, and your JJ Kocha as well, and like Brentford don't necessarily have, but in terms of like how like they were direct but like clever about it, and kind of using I suppose methods that maybe other teams haven't used, maybe get an extra edge. I think it's a really interesting case study, and again, it speaks to, I suppose, the benefit of kind of putting the time and money, I suppose, in that side of football. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how they do. They were credits themselves. Again, that sounds patronizing, but they really were.
I'm fearful as a United fan. I'm actually dreading going there now for the away game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but, I don't want to like this come across as an excuse and things, but it probably was like the worst time to go there, because they had a couple of games to adjust to the Premier League. It's still early in the season. It's still such a novelty. It's the first, like, okay, they had Arsenal at home as well, but the first kind of like currently really big team to go there Saturday night. Like it was a perfect storm, I suppose, and that's why these games get chosen for Saturday night football, obviously. But yeah, I think like, coming into the winter, if they have a couple of injuries, their squad gets stretched, and United or City or Chelsea are going there, it might not be the same proposition, I think. And then I think we were just, I suppose that's a quirk of the fixture computer, isn't it?
One of the earlier games at the same time, actually, as the United game, was the Chelsea and City game. So obviously, on paper, that was the kind of heavyweight game of the weekend. Obviously as well, going into it, you could, with the likes of Lukaku and the absolute plethora of players that City have, you could have been expecting a goal fest there. So a 1-0 win for City kind of puts it down as kind of more of a cagey affair than you would have expected. Kirk, obviously, with it being on at the same time as the United match, I'm sure you were focusing on the United match. But given, obviously the chance to have seen the highlights and a bit of analysis, how did you react to that? Me personally, I was expecting, I was at least expecting Chelsea to register one goal at least. They've been looking really, really solid so far.
Yeah, and after the result of the previous weekend, and I think City have been a little bit sloppy and slow to start by their standards, and that sounds a bit strange to say that, because they won 5-0. They had the Champions League game 6-3, wasn't it, I think, and that's slow and sloppy for City. Like, they lost the Charity Shield, but they just seemed to, out of the blue, absolutely up the ante. They could have had 4 or 5 goals when you look back at it. They were solid in defence. Cancelo was fantastic. They brought him in. They didn't have him in the final, if memory serves right. He came in, and
you're right.
He was fantastic. What I've seen of the highlights of it, he was fantastic. I'm not gone. You can probably sense the tone on the whole Lukaku thing. I still don't think he's going to be that prolific for them. He will score goals, don't get me wrong. The history of him, I suppose, is the hot and cold. He'll go through phases. He'll go on a hot streak, 6, 7, 8 games, and he'll get you a rake of goals and then disappear for a few weeks. Now, he hasn't quite done that yet, but he was very, very poor at the weekend. It kind of looked like the old Lukaku back at United. His first touch was quite poor at times. He did get his goal, but it was a mile offside and the build up to it. The other thing to mention as well, I will say, Jesus as well, he's just kind of come out of nowhere. You wonder, maybe, okay, City they were in for Messi, there was talk they didn't get Kane, and then there was the whole Ronaldo thing as well. Then, Pep will probably, get the last laugh and end up turning in, Jesus into the next Aguero, 20 odd goals a season. I hope he doesn't, but he's really kind of started the season very well, and he's got that backup there as well, turning Torres into the false 9 as well, and he's started the season pretty impressive as well. But like the results, I had draw kind of all over that. Or I was thinking Chelsea might sneak it. On the basis of the previous week's results as well. They absolutely battered Spurs the weekend before, but maybe that's an indication of, how poor Spurs are at the moment. And obviously we'll talk about that in a few moments. And, it was a case of Chelsea being so good that weekend and Spurs being so absolutely woeful. And then you come into a heavy hitter in Man City, and Man City just kind of, turned it up another level on them. And they genuinely, they could have had at least 4 or 5 goals from the footage that I've seen.
Dave, what about yourself? What did you make of it?
Yeah, when I saw the score come in again, I didn't watch it live, but I was kind of happy from a Liverpool perspective that Chelsea had dropped points. That was my initial reaction. Again, that just goes to show how the narrative and how I suppose the common opinion of Chelsea and City have kind of shifted over the past couple of months and things. But again, from then looking back and watching the highlights and things again, you just see, I suppose, how good City are and how serious City are. And look, I think memories are short in football and things. And like you were saying here, City haven't had a bad, they lost to Tottenham in the first game, but they've been pretty much good ever since. They then draw to Southampton, and again suddenly it's okay, it's Chelsea to lose. And so again, we have to remember we're only 6 games in, and these teams are still figuring themselves out. Again, you can see with Chelsea again. It's really interesting that they look imperious playing this kind of nice 3-4-2-1, and then they change it up because obviously Mount was injured, and then suddenly it looks like they've never played together before again. It's a broken team, I suppose, where you have the 3 in midfield, Kante, Jorginho, and Kovacic, who kind of dominated the second half against Spurs last week, suddenly can't connect at all with the front 2. And again, I suppose the issue I would have with that, looking at it on paper, is that when you play a team with Havertz and Mount in behind Lukaku, you have Lukaku who wants to go in behind and stretch the play, and you have Mount and Havertz who wants to come towards the ball. And that's a nice little combination because again, you're basically making the space for the 2 in behind. They can pick up clever positions. I think Havertz is probably one of the best players in the league, probably filling a void that David Silva used to have years ago. There's been that player who's just impossible to mark between the lines. His movement is so good, and Mount as well is also excellent at that. And then suddenly they played without either of those players at the weekend. You had Werner and Lukaku who both want to stretch the play and go in behind. And then if you can't get the ball to them again, you're basically playing with 9. Do you know what I mean? Because they can't get into the game unless you're going to go completely long ball. And I think that suited City. And I think they had spare players. Again, Pep was obsessed with having that spare man at the back and things, and he had Rocky sitting in front. And again, they just completely tactically nullified Chelsea, and then they stopped them playing any kind of direct football by pressing them so high. So I think Guardiola, having got it badly wrong in the Champions League final, and also kind of made mistakes in the FA Cup semi-final last year, seemed to completely get it right at the weekend. And this goes to show that these teams are excellent elite football teams. They've excellent football players. On any given day, it can go either way. And I think that both of these teams are going to have serious seasons. They're going to be looking at posting 90+ point tallies, and that's ominous for the rest of the league.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is the thing, that was one of the things that I was more disappointed about with the Liverpool result, in that the quality this season, from those big 4 teams, it could be one of the first leagues in as far as I can remember, that 4 of them would be in a title race. So really,
I don't
you need to be getting points wherever you can.
Yeah, I don't see this season's winners being as high as 90. I think maybe the 75 to 80 kind of bracket, I think, might win it. Because
really?
Probably about the 80 mark, a little bit lower than what it has been. With the points totals Liverpool and City have been setting the last couple of years, it's just been incredible. So I think with if you just kind of just mentioned there, the fact that we're going to have 4 teams, and it's quite difficult, to differentiate, okay, United are having a bit of a hiccup at the moment, and we could do what we have been doing in recent years and go on a bit of a run, an unbeaten run, and, we're back in the mix again. I think between the champions down to 4th, I really genuinely don't see there being that big of a gap. I don't see there being this 19, 20 odd point gap. I certainly don't see it. I think there's going to be 10 points maximum. I think you're going to see these top sides take a lot of points off of each other. I saw a stat or a post that put up the top 6, whatever it was, the points difference between each other last season, and there really wasn't a whole lot in it. There was a whole hullabaloo about United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's record in these matches, but the other teams wasn't that great either. He was only a few points behind them, and the reason being was because we were all taking points off of each other. And most of those games,
a lot of draws.
Yeah, exactly. They were 0-0s. Most of our games in those games were 0-0s, and maybe he's thinking, with Ronaldo in there, he could be the difference maker in some of those games. He could turn those 0-0s into a 1-0, and that's what I'm hoping as a United man. But, I don't think we're going to see a 15, 20 odd points variance this season anyway, myself personally anyway, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think there'll be a very small margin between first to fourth, really. So definitely there'll be a small margin between kind of the winners and the runners up. To touch on the last kind of big name game at the weekend, obviously both teams have kind of had a bit of a fall from grace over the last while. But Arsenal put in a really good performance and beat Tottenham comfortably 3-1. They were 3-0 up at halftime, as far as I remember. Dave, both teams to me are just baffling, really, these days. Like for a lot of the season, Arsenal are just woeful and like almost a laughing stock in terms of some of the performances they're putting in, and then they go out and absolutely boss Spurs for the whole game. And Tottenham then on the other hand, first game of the season, I thought they were outstanding against City, beat them 1-0, but really controlled the game and didn't let City have a sniff, really, and they defended really well. And then they've gone and lost three on the bounce now as well. What do you make of them, or what do you make of the match first of all, I suppose, and then the teams themselves?
Yeah, I think it was. It's hard again. Don't want to read too much into one game and stuff. But I think to me, it looked like Arsenal are a team that again have maybe found a bit of an identity again, and it's interesting because I think they had this identity at the start of last season. Again, thinking back to the Community Shield win over Liverpool, and obviously the kind of back end of the kind of post-lockdown season, where again they had some really good results under Arteta and things, and they seem to have a really kind of strong way of playing and I suppose a plan. And again, they got a lot of goals. I know they scored a goal against us in the Community Shield final, and then also at Anfield a couple of weeks later, where they really sucked in the other team on the press. They almost keeping the ball on their own end line, and then suddenly get a couple of passes out and they're away on a really fast break. And that was the second goal they scored yesterday, where they Xhaka nearly lost the ball on the edge of his own box, getting the ball from Ramsdale, but again managed to turn out, and then suddenly they're on the attack. And I think I when I look out for teams that are promising, or teams that I think will do well this season, or teams I think can have something to build upon, it's those ones who I think have these patterns of play, or the ones who kind of have a plan in place, I suppose. And I think Arsenal have that now, and they probably didn't for a while, and there was a lot of chopping and changing of personnel. But that was essentially their first choice team yesterday, right? And again, if you look at the team, or even the back four that started against City when they got beaten 5-0 there a few weeks ago, I think Leno was in goal. I think you had Chambers right back, you had Holding and Kolasinac in centre half. Again, these players aren't good enough, you know what I mean? Whereas yesterday you change that up to the new guy Tomiyasu, White, and Gabriel. Again, these aren't players who aren't going to get into the top fours defenses, but they're definitely an upgrade on what they had. So I think I know Pep got kind of some criticism after that game when they beat Arsenal for kind of giving Arteta a bit of a pat on the head and saying, well, look, you've lots of injuries, but to be fair, they did. And I think Thomas Partey, if they can keep him fit, is a really good player as well. So the team they had out yesterday is their strongest team, and you can see what they're trying to do when they have the players there. If you look at Spurs on the other hand, again, I don't know what Spurs are trying to do. I just don't know what the plan is. It just seems like I think the points that they got at the start of the season was definitely an example of kind of a false dawn, in the sense that you did again against City, a big game, first game of the season, fans back at the stadium, great. And then pick up points against Wolves, and Wolves, they were actually battered on the XG based on the stats, and then beat Watford at home. I just don't know, looking at Spurs, what they're trying to do. Again, I think Nuno is under pressure there, having just one manager of the month, bizarrely. And I think he needs to maybe look at maybe going back to something like the shape he used at Wolves and things, because I just don't think it's working for them at all at the moment. Kane, they're not getting anything out of Kane. I think Son is one of the best players in the league. I rate Son so highly, and again, the couple of games I've seen in them last week and this week, they're not getting anything out of them. They're tough fixtures, but look, I think Arsenal are going one way and Spurs are going the other way for me. I don't think Arsenal are going to do anything crazy this year, but I definitely think they could be targeting 5th or 6th. I don't think Spurs will be in the top half on current form.
Well, yeah, Kirk, like that. I'd agree with Dave in terms of Tottenham just look entirely lost at the moment to me. If you're watching a game, Kane seems relatively uninterested. It seems they kind of really missed the boat in terms of this was kind of prime summer to cash in on him. And like if you're watching the game and it flashes across to the bench and you see Santo there, sometimes it surprises me because I'm like, oh yeah, he's the manager. It seems they don't like Dave said, they don't seem to have an identity or really know what they're trying to achieve.
But he was like what, 5th choice?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like it feels like he doesn't, not that he doesn't want to be there. He just feels like he has a look about him, or his confidence is. I don't know what it is. Like am I supposed to be here? Like it's just a bit weird. The fact that he was 4th or 5th choice, and wasn't he announced and then they pulled the plug and then he was announced again or something like that.
Wasn't he going to Palace? Wasn't that it? And then
it was very strange.
It was such a strange season because like that, you'd see the headline come out from the Athletic or something. Oh, Tottenham are in advanced talks with such and such. And like, okay, well, that looks fairly nailed on. And like he's come over and he's chatted to them, and then. No, they've pulled out. That's not happening. And then
there was talk of Pochettino going back apparently. And
Gattuso, remember Gattuso was going to be the manager for like 12 hours or something?
Yeah, absolutely bizarre.
And they were without a manager for something like 60-something days or something ridiculous like that. I don't know. I just don't know. I wouldn't like to be a Spurs fan at present, put it that way.
No, I think there's far bigger problems there at the club overall. Okay. It's kind of funny, and I've kind of touched on it there a little bit with the United thing about losing 3 in the last 4, and we've kind of hit on a little bit here throughout the podcast. It's funny, and Dave just mentioned it there as well. We have short memories. It's funny how quickly things can turn around in a game of football. If you remember 3 weeks ago on the back of the City results, Ozil was a bit of a bollocks basically, and he tweeted out "trust the process."
Yeah,
basically 2 fingers to Arteta. Yeah. 3 weeks later, they've got 3 wins on the bounce, 2 clean sheets. They've won a North London derby. I myself, and I'm sure practically everyone in the group, was thinking Arsenal are screwed. They were rock bottom of the Premier League.
Yeah, I was looking up what the odds were for them to go down.
Say that again, sorry?
I was looking up the odds for what they were to go down.
Yeah, and I actually think I tweeted that, or not tweeted, I put it into the group as well, but the odds were, I think they were like 45 or 50 to 1 or something like that. I think it was something crazy, 35 to 1 or something maybe. But it's just funny how quickly things can turn around within the same month. And it's just such a bizarre fixture. Everything about and the clubs that are involved and the situations that are happening around both clubs. Spurs were top of the table. As you rightly said, the manager was given the Manager of the Month award. They looked fantastic in the season opener. They beat City, and things didn't look right with City. And you're thinking, geez, maybe they might have appointed the right manager here. But it only takes a couple of weeks. The wheels start to come off and things fall apart. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the background with Spurs, though. You can go back even further. You think back to when Jose got sacked. What was it, 4 or 5 days before the League Cup final?
Yeah, that was bizarre.
Yeah. Absolutely bizarre. Now, I'm no Jose fan. I didn't want him at United at all. Don't get me wrong. But you just don't go sacking a manager a few days before a cup final.
Yeah, that was
absolutely bizarre.
Why would you get him if you're not going to let him manage a cup? He's not going to.
All the managers in current world football at the moment. That's what
on a one-off game. If you want him to be there for one game, why not let him have the cup? Yeah.
Jose doesn't give a fiddler's about entertainment. I'm here to win trophies, and that's it.
Yeah,
and you're 4 days away from a cup final and a chance to finally put some silverware, into the showroom, and they go and sack him. It was just absolutely bizarre. He should have seen that season out, and if they wanted to move on, fine, fair enough. But get the final out of the way with. It was absolutely bizarre. I can't what I've seen of the game as well. Then I get what Arteta is doing. They've turned around very quickly. In fairness to them, you can almost say it's near enough. It's okay. It's not a finished model for Arteta by any stretch of the imagination, but it does have a feel of an Arteta team about it already.
Well, it was said that I think he signed 6 of the players and gave new contracts to the other 5. Was that the stat? So again, it is
something like that. Yeah,
he wants them all to be there. So
He's done business quickly. He really has, and he's kind of turned it in. And the three guys behind Aubameyang as well, Sacco, Smith Rowe, and Odegaard. I was very surprised he let Willock go. Okay, he had some great form up at Newcastle at the back end of last season, set all kinds of records and all that up there. And I thought it was absolutely mind-boggling to get rid of him. And he had some good form at the back end of last season as well, Smith Rowe, and he was looking, like a bit of a baller, and he started the season very well. One thing that I did notice, even in the City game when they got thumped 5-0 before the red card, I actually thought like they're countered, as you said, the way they sub teams in, and they counter very, very well. They really do. They have a knack of catching teams on the counter very well. Defensively, though, that game, as you mentioned, they had Chambers. I think he was at fault for 2 or 3 of the goals. He was just an absolute comedy show.
Going down, holding your face when you've been brushed, when you're defending.
He was just shambolic.
Sackable for me, I think. As a fan, I don't know.
I've never it was absolutely shambolic. The next door neighbour's an Arsenal supporter as well, and geez, he's been down in the dumps the last few weeks, and I saw him yesterday, and he's just buzzing again. And it's just amazing how quickly these things can turn around. From a United perspective, I'm hoping we can do something similar with the fixtures that we have coming up soon, but.
Yeah, I think fixtures they had Norwich and Burnley the last 2. So again, they've taken 9 from 9 now, but again, 2 of those games were against the 2 of the bottom 3 or whatever. So again, that they got lucky in that sense, I suppose. But
no, I didn't see the Burnley game, and I did hear, just reading around different reports, that they were quite lucky apparently to get away with that 1-0, but maybe they're the right fixtures at the right time to get momentum going. And then the Spurs fixture, I think, is kind of falling into their laps at the right time as well. They just
if you look at the crowd, I don't know, do you see the footage yesterday? They interviewed Aubameyang and Smith Rowe after the game, and they with COVID, obviously now they don't do the interviews in the tunnel anymore. They do them on the pitch. And they had it set up on the touchline, and there was like a big, probably a couple of 100 Arsenal fans had stayed behind to just chant, singing Aubameyang songs or whatever else. And Jeff Shreves was trying to interview the 2 boys, and they literally couldn't keep, they were doing this for the whole thing. They just couldn't. There's a lot of support there, and again, it's definitely I think Arteta has the support of the fans, and that's going to go a long way, I think. So they obviously, again, I'm not an Arsenal fan, I don't watch it every week, but I think the fans who were in the ground seem to be supporting him, and I think that was, like you said, perfect timing with that game yesterday, because you get this massive swell of kind of adrenaline and enthusiasm when the crowd is that much behind you, and for a big game like Spurs, you couldn't have asked for anything more timely, I think.
They have a nice run of fixtures coming up as well now in the next few weeks as well. So even on the fantasy side of things, Brighton are doing very well. But outside of that, then Palace, Villa, Watford, and Newcastle, I think, coming up in the next 7 or 8 fixtures.
Anyone you're targeting or you're interested in fantasy football? Is that
Smith Rowe possibly? Yes, I think he's done quite well.
I think he'll get more numbers than Odegaard as well. I think Odegaard is more
and for set pieces as well, he might be good.
Yeah, I think Odegaard, he's actually quite nice to watch. He kind of knits everything together, but he's not like an Ozil number 10 who's playing all the true balls and is kind of running the game there. He's more kind of tidy. He's a good player, but I think he will actually bring numbers out of Smith Rowe and Saka. So yeah,
he's more of the orchestrator rather than the one actually going to be getting the assists and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's clever. Again, he's a nice player to watch. Actually, I'm impressed by him. Again, I don't think he'll get headlines as kind of the way Ozil would just go on a run where he get 6 assists in 3 games or something. He's incredible things. I think Odegaard's more subtle than that, but nice footballer. I think he'll bring numbers out of the players around him.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Kane going forward though for Spurs as well is going to be a big problem. He doesn't.
Yeah, I think so too.
He obviously doesn't want to be there. He obviously wanted to get out, and of all people, Daniel Levy, he just has this association of being a great businessman, and he's done a really good job up to a certain point that season when he got to the Champions League final. I think the wheels kind of came off. Things kind of stagnated at that point, and they needed to kind of freshen things up. There's no problem with him staying another season or whatever after that. I think the right decision was definitely to let him go in the summer, and he doesn't want to be there. Somebody of that level, that magnitude at the club. He is Spurs. Everything you think Spurs, you think Harry Kane at the moment. And if he's wanting out the door, but he's staying there and he's not putting the effort in. It's a big issue. It really is a big problem going forward. You wonder what they're going to do. What kind of it says for them for their season ahead as well. You kind of have to fear for them. I definitely agree with Dave. Of the two, if you were to support either of the clubs at the moment, I think Arsenal are looking a little bit rosier, all right. It looks things look a bit kinder for them.
I'd be worried if I was Harry Kane, because I don't know, like, if City don't buy you, I don't know where you can go. You know, I don't. There's no market for Harry Kane. Again, it's the Wilfried Zaha problem, where you sign a big contract at a smaller team, and that's what Spurs are at the moment. Again,
It was a 6-year deal, wasn't it?
yeah, and again, it's big money.
Same.
And again, obviously, he's approaching his what? He's like 27 or something. Is he he's almost priced himself out of a move in many senses, unless he's willing to take like a big pay cut, which realistically it's not going to happen. So I can see an Alan Shearer situation developing there, where he's just there for forever, and no one buys him, because I don't see it, unless City come back to him from next summer, which they might. I just don't think there's a market for Harry Kane. So United aren't going to buy him. Liverpool aren't going to buy him. Chelsea aren't going to buy him. And then you're looking abroad. And again, like, is there a market there? Like PSG, you're stacked. Real are all in on Mbappe. Barcelona, no money. You're going to go to Italy. Like, again, they don't traditionally pay big salaries there. Like, Bayern Munich don't buy players in the other leagues. So like, like, there's nowhere for Harry Kane to go. I think he's kind of backed himself into a corner here. And like you said, I'd be worried if I was a Spurs fan.
I think he probably realised that once, the City thing kind of fell through, or there was a spanner in the works, whatever happened with it, he kind of realised, I've got absolutely nowhere to go now. I'm going to have to grovel. Because the next day, then he sent out that ridiculous tweet then, I've always been committed. I don't know what any of these are all on about.
And it was probably why he was pushing so hard for that move, is because, I just don't see how he gets out if City don't buy him.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he looks he's missed the window pretty much, and it could, because if the Jesus thing works out, or if Torres, or the rotation of the two of them as the striker or false nine, because obviously City thought, oh shit, we can't win something if we don't have an out and out striker. If the options they're now going with works, then they're like, well, Grant, why do we need to spend 150 million on Harry Kane, who again is a year older and has had the season of kind of not being that bothered. It'll be an interesting one.
Just buy Haaland,
yeah, exactly.
It's a no-brainer.
The only thing as well I'd say about Spurs as well, and Nuno, he does need a bit of time. He does. I think Dave hit the nail on the head there as well. They don't have an identity, but that's obvious. How the team is set up at the moment as well, tactically, like its shape, everything. They went with a flat back four yesterday. Tanganga just looks completely at 6s and 7s. He doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing.
Half time, wasn't it?
Yeah, like they were battered, within 20 minutes of the game. Like the game was over in 20 minutes. The supporters were walking out of the stadium. He seems to be changing his formation quite a bit as well. And I don't know. He doesn't seem to know his best team, and that's fair enough. 6 games in, you can say that's more than fair enough. He does need a bit of time. Will he get that at Spurs and Levy? I don't think he will. You'd have to fear from him and think, he could be gone by Christmas if they don't start getting some results, which is completely unfair. Okay, he was 4th or 5th choice, but if you're going to give somebody, a stab at it, you have to give them a bit of time and let them roll out their ideas, support them financially, and see where it goes. August to December, it's not going to. You can't get a real picture of what's going to happen with the club long term. Like, you need to give them a bit of time, whether it's right or wrong. And I think the style of play in general, I don't think that's going to suit Spurs. They like their attacking players. So, it was even mentioned, I think it was in the 2nd or 3rd game week, they were on Sky, and straight away Gary Neville and stuff like that, and a few other punters saying, look, you can't keep on playing like this. He's going to have to attack. You associate attacking players with Spurs. This is one of those clubs they do. In my lifetime of watching them anyway, they've had a long history of having, a lot of great attackers, and they are enjoyable to watch for the most part, most seasons, and if he doesn't change his outlook, you have to fear for him, all right.
Perfect, lads. Well, I think that's a good spot there to wrap it up. Looking forward now to next week as well, with the big match of Liverpool and City on Sunday night. So we're hoping for aren't we, Kirk? We're all hoping for a good result there for Liverpool.
I'll happily take a draw on that one anyway. More than happy with that.
Perfect. Well, brilliant. Thanks, lads. Dave and Kirk, thanks a million for joining us today.
Very much enjoyed it.
Andrew, yeah, thanks, man, lads.
Thanks a million.
Chat to you again soon, lads.
Chat to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.